Hide my lunch. And Sharina, whenever you're ready to start that screen share, anytime is fine. All right, everyone, welcome to this, our last in the Accessible PDF Forms series. Yay! It has been a fun journey, but it feels like it is time to be done. So again, welcome. Just a quick note in our welcome. Slide 2, we do have closed captioning available. If you are in need of closed captioning, participation is encouraged. If you have questions, we'd like to get those in the Q&A so we can kind of track those. And feel free to use the text chat for comments, and we will also be monitoring that as well. Nick, Carolyn, and I are here for support today. I want to toss it right over to Sharina and let her get started and jump into today's presentation on how we are going to package the product that we have now created. And bit of a spoiler alert, you'll find that even we learned something along the way. So we found that we missed something in our first session that we should have been considering. So with that little spoiler, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Sharina.
Thanks, Lane, and I'm excited to be here at the very end. I was like excited to start it and then to finish it. And I'm super excited to be back on campus today instead of having to present from my home and to be fully vaccinated and masked on campus. It's awesome. So I wanted to share that little bit of joy as well. So today we'll finish probably quickly. We just have a few things to cover, and I will get to the spoiler that Lane was alluding to earlier throughout this agenda. But our agenda today is we're going to recap where we've gone, how we got here, today's outcomes, which basically is our distribution methods and returning methods. How are our participants going to return their forms to us? Writing those instructions so that they're clear, and then I will show you what we did with the form that we'll be sending out. All right, so just to recap our scenario, remember we're creating a training needs survey for state employees. We want to make sure that this form can be printed and completed by someone using a pen and a paper, and a form that can be obtained in electronic format, such as on a website or through an email, and completed using a computer or a mobile device that can then be emailed back to us or returned in some way, and a form that has all the necessary electronic structure to allow assistive technology users to complete the form on a computer. Those were our goals, and I think as I look through that list, that's exactly what we've been doing over the last few weeks. Feel really good. Hopefully you all are feeling really good about the forms that you've created and the form that we've created as a group. Last week, or last time, 2 weeks ago, we covered a lot of information all at once. The remediation steps and strategies, common accessibility issues, and how to do some manual testing. And again, it was, we just kind of went through some of the the most common ones, realizing that there are many, but learning what that process looks like and how to integrate it into our workflow. And the more that we learn, the more that we can do early on, but learning what kind of questions to ask and what kind of things to check for in our documents. Today, we're going to talk about packaging the form for distribution, the methods of distribution and returning the completed form, writing those instructions, and then where to place those instructions. At the end of this presentation, we'll have that completed PDF form ready for distribution on either the web or in an email. Okay. So the first step, obviously, is going to be determine how you want that form returned. What do you want your participants to be able, how do you want them to return it to you? How do you want to get that form and that information back from you? And this is kind of a balance between what you need and the ease and convenience for you, and also the ease and convenience for your participants. What's going to be easy for them, what's going to be most useful to you. It's kind of how you make those decisions. So we want to keep the process as simple and as straightforward as possible. And again, that's for our convenience and for our needs, but as well as considering what we're asking of our participants to do. And we want to keep that process consistent. So if I'm sending multiple forms out over a year, or I'm working with this group of people often, my clients, my participants, I want to use the same kind of forms and the same kind of process for return, so that it's not something you have to relearn all of the time, but there is a consistent way that it gets emailed back, or a consistent way that it gets mailed, or to the same person it gets mailed to. So trying to keep a consistency across those forms. And the two that we came up with was print and mail. So I'm going to print it out, have somebody use a pen to write it out with, and put it in the mail and send it back to us. Or we're going to save it as a PDF and have it emailed to our institution. Those are the two that we are chosen to do with our form. All right, so writing the instructions. How do we tell the participant what to do with the form? And trying to consider what information they already have, what information we still need to give them. So we want to consider the language. Will they know what it means to download? Most people do, but that's something I need to ask. Will they know when I say download the PDF, upload to an email or attach to an email? So I want to consider the kind of language that I'm using. And again, that consistency, what gets used most often when we're talking about that? What will they be familiar with? We want to make sure that the actions are very clear. And that comes with putting that action first, that action word. So download, upload, attach, print, right? These are our action words or verbs for other words, and putting them first. So do this, and then giving the information or the details on how to do that particular action. We want to make sure that we break the action into smaller parts, such as download, save as a PDF, attach the PDF to an email, instead of just saying attach a PDF to an email. We need to break it down into what exactly we're asking them to do. Downloading it, then we're saving it, and we're attaching the PDF to an email. Or we're printing it and putting it, you can print it, put it in an envelope, and send it through the US Postal Service. Including all of the information. That's basically what I've been talking about here, is including all of the information, right? If they need an email address to send it back to, make sure that it's a correct email address. You can make that a link in a digital document. Make sure that it's a consistent email that they use all the time. Make sure that it's an email that gets opened, that is accessible by you or by the people who need the information. Give them the subject line so that they're returning it, and they're returning it under this subject line, so that everyone who's dealing with that email will know exactly what's contained in that email. You can give them the title of the file, so when they download the PDF, there's a specific title to that. And then make sure that you give if you're for the printing and the mailing, you're giving every part of the address that they'll need. So where it goes to, if it has to be a specific person that it is care of or contacted, the organization's full name. Don't assume that they know what organization they're sending it to. So write the physical address out exactly the way it would appear on an envelope. So you know that you're giving them all the information. And I'm sure most of this is probably feeling very intuitive, like you already knew this information. But it's kind of really nice to have a kind of a checklist so that as you're going through, you're making sure that you're including all of that information, because it's really easy to miss something that we do repetitively all of the time. So we don't always think about it. This is why a checklist is a good idea. Okay, and then determine how you're going to send it. If you're going to email it, your website, or whether you're going to do both. Here I just have a little picture of a package already tied up with a bow, ready to send off to our participants, and that's what our goal is here. Okay. So including the instructions in the form and the distribution source, you need to do that in both. So by distribution source, I mean the web page or the email that you're sending this out through. That's the distribution source. And then we already have the form. So the instructions for how to return the form, what you're going to do with the form once it's completed, needs to be in both the form and the distribution source, because those two places can become separated. So for example, if I open the form in a new window, I might lose that email in my inbox. I don't know about you, but that's something my email gets very full very quickly, and I might lose where that email is. I also might lose the website. So I open up, I click on the website, I click on the form opens up for me, and then that window gets lost, or I might have accidentally closed it. This happens to me. So wanting to make sure that I have that information readily available when I need it. It's nice to have it both in the form and in the distribution source. So the participants should know the expectations, what their expectations are before they start the process. So if I'm giving them an email, I'm telling them what this form is for. I'm telling it who it's come from. I'm giving all the context of why I need this information, where it's coming from, and how they're going to complete it. It's important that they recognize that if they choose to open it up, that they're going to have to email it, or they're going to have to print it off, or that they have choices. But those expectations should be upfront before they even agree to filling out the form. And then once they've completed the form, they shouldn't have to go back to the source to find the instructions. That's more labor for them, right? It'll be easier if it's just at the end of the form, there's the instructions there. So I knew going in what I was going to have to do with the form, and at the end of it, I don't have to try to remember. It's right there for me too. The less that you make the participant work, the more participation you'll have. So again, I talked about at the beginning that we want to make sure that we're gathering information in a way that's useful to us, but also in a way that is effective and asking as little labor from our participants as possible. I know that all of us have probably started in on a survey, for example, and for a company that we enjoy, and we're about 10 questions in and we're just, we're done with this. I'm sure it's happened to you. It's happened to me several times, and you get exhausted in the process of filling out the survey. So we don't want to get there with our participants. We don't want to give them that experience. We want to make it as easy as possible. That's why we've done all the work to create an accessible document that moves smoothly, whether we're doing that visually or whether we're doing that with assistive technology. We can move smoothly and easily through, and that we're asking relevant information that will be important and not superficial information, right? So we don't exhaust our participants too. So other considerations. This is important as part of the context in that distribution method, whether that's an email or what's on the website. You should list the expected time that it takes a person to complete the form from start to finish, from the time that they pick it up, they put their name on it, or the date wherever it starts, and and they are ready to send it off. How long is that going to take them to get through it? You want to be honest with that time, and you want to consider not just your own experience, but how many people, what kind of time it would take them to go through filling out this form. And you want it to be upfront and honest about that time so that they know going into it what their time expectations are. You may also consider including an HTML version of the form, especially like on a website, but always make it clear that the participant can either use the HTML or the PDF version. You don't need them or expect them to do both. We use the HTML because the screen readers, there are screen readers that may be more compatible with the HTML version than with the PDF version. So that's one of the things that we can consider is creating both options for a person to be able to use. Okay, we have to talk about this because we're talking about emails, is the security considerations. So do not open or fill out a form that you are not positive of the source and the context. It is encouraged and acceptable to email the source and ask for additional information before responding or downloading a form to a questionable email. So one of the things that you might want to consider is like, you don't know where this email has come from. You're reading through it, it doesn't have your name on the email. You don't know why they're asking for this form to be filled out, or you don't know what they're going to do with the information that you're giving them. These are kind of things that should bring up questions in your mind, and it's okay to ask those. It might be a completely legitimate form that someone just hasn't given all the context information that you need to fill it out. So it's always okay to email the source, email the company, ask them what they're looking for with this information before you fill out the form and give someone information about yourself. And on the other side, you always want to think about that when you're constructing that email, right? Is that you're giving enough information that your participant shouldn't be nervous about filling it out for you. So Diane, I just saw your question here. This is a very good question, and I'm going to, so for the HTML, do screen readers read both older versions of the most recent HTML5? And I'm going to let Nicholas go. Nick, did you want to tackle that? Is that what I'm seeing here?
I just liked it and was going to move it over to answering live here. But yes, I mean, Lane would be able to speak to this more than myself, but yeah, for the most part, especially JAWS is going to jive with HTML just fine. Same with NVDA and VoiceOver if you're using iOS, from my understanding. There shouldn't be any trouble there.
Go ahead,
yes, Lane. Yeah. And HTML forms are almost preferred for a lot of screen reader users because there's fewer steps involved, because we know that the form is going where it needs to go. There's fewer questions in that. And I think that's just kind of a general thing for a lot of people is, okay, I know it's getting where it needs to go because I submitted it on the site. There are, of course, web accessibility considerations when you start doing an HTML form, like making sure each of the form fields has the appropriate label, but that's the same in your PDF form. If you remember, we took the time to add the labels and the tooltips both in the PDF form. There are similar considerations in HTML. And the screen readers will work on those as well. And a lot of folks have just mobile devices, and PDF forms tend not to work extraordinarily well on PDF devices for anyone, but they are especially cumbersome for screen reader users on mobile devices like iPhones and Android devices. So that is another consideration when you're even thinking about before we're taking that step back clear to session one, right? One of those considerations to think about your audience before you decide, am I going to do this in a PDF? Or should it just be on a website where all of the responses are automated for me and the end user has some confidence that their information is going to get where it needs to go? So I don't know. I think Carolyn and I are both in agreement when it comes to forms. I think our first tip to anybody is do it on a web page, do it in HTML.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot more steps in putting together the PDF, but sometimes that's the choice that we've made, and it might be the right choice depending on the context or the situation that you're in. But yeah, I think that we've all come to it's complicated. A PDF is complicated. So that I've lost my place in here. But mostly I just wanted to like reiterate the security here, both as the person who's sending it and any person who's receiving it, is to make sure that you are being careful with what kind of information you give back or what kind of information you volunteer and to whom, and make sure that that is a secure place. I have my sign here that says security across the bottom of here. It's just to remind us that that should always be a consideration. All right, so here we go from what we talked about, like we missed a step as we were considering this particular presentation. We realized that we had messed up and we'd missed this step at the very beginning. So here's my meme, because I want you to recognize it. Says, I don't whine and make excuses. I learn and I make adjustments, which is what we do all of the time as humans, as in our workplaces, as professionals, as Adobe users, right? We are learning as we go along, and it's always, we're adapting our workflow to adjust the new information that we understand. So as we're going through, it's never going to be as linear as we want it to be, our process. So that if we make step 1 absolutely perfect and step 2 and step 3, and that it will always work out exactly that way. But to be prepared that the context may change a little bit. We might get new information that needs to be included in the form when we're already in the middle of that workflow. We're already doing our accessibility check. We might recognize that when we're doing our accessibility check that we needed one more option, and we'll need to go back and do that. So one of the things that we recognized, just a little one, was adding page numbers to our document, realizing that if we were going to print it out, we want to make sure people understand that there's multiple pages, rather than that if only one sheet printed that they would think they were complete. And so being aware that there were multiple pages and putting page numbers in there was something that we didn't even think about till we got to the very end. And those kind of issues or considerations might occur. And we don't want that to be let that be a deterrent in you completing your forms or feeling frustrated by it, but mark it as a learning experience and include it in your workflow the next time that you're going back and you're starting a new form. So the thing that we didn't do was add the instructions to the form when we were first starting out. We didn't leave a place for it. We probably needed to, we know it would have been better to have added that at the very beginning when we were putting all of that text in at the onset. That's when we should have added the instructions. Because now, once we've done all that accessibility checking and we've done all of the investigation into making sure that we have an accessible document, we need to go back to the source document, that original Word document, to make the changes. And that's okay. It's exactly what the process should look like. If we're ever going to make a change, we go back to that original source document. So always save the process that you're doing in that source document. It's going to be invaluable to have that up to date. And then making the new PDFs as you go through, or creating the new versions of the PDF as you're completing the tasks. So that's exactly what we did, is that we went back to the original Word document. We made those changes and then created a new PDF version and started looking at the accessibility of what we added. Okay, so returning to the source document to include the instructions. One side of my screen has a version of the wording that we used, and the other is the process. So returning to the source document to include instructions, we made sure that there were clear actions and tasks. There was some similar formatting between the two options that we gave. We have a print option, we have an electronic option. We use the same terms. So in our instructions, it says, please return this completed survey to the Idaho Digital Accessibility Consortium. So we spelled it all the way out, so it was very clear what the organization is asking for this information. Use either the print or electronic option described as below. So where we're going to find this information, and when we put that, the reading order, it will be what follows. The next steps will follow. So that would be the print option and the electronic option. We talked about the print or electronic. We used those terms when we were introducing these options, and then we titled them that, print option and electronic option, before we gave the actions and the tasks to use either one. use the same format on the form as you do in the distribution source. So you're not going to change the wording of this particular section in your email. You're just going to cut and paste it into your email. You're going to use the same wording that is on your website so that it stays consistent with the form as it does in the distribution. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. I want to show you our form. All right, so this should look very familiar to you at this point. This is our form, our PDF form. Here's the page one, looking all beautiful, neat and tidy. It's got our text boxes in it. We know that it's been tagged appropriately. And it looks like, just looking at it, looks like something that can be filled out. And then we know digitally that it's something that can be accessed and completed. And then at the very end is where we've added the submitting the survey. And you'll see we have the print option right here next to the electronic option and tagged it that way so the reading order will read it through the submitting the survey, then print options, and then the electronic options. And that is our form. And that's where I ended, is that now we're ready to go. It's ready to be sent off in an email, attached to an email. It's ready to be embedded into a web page. It's ready to go. And we've completed our weeks together with this beautiful form that IDAP can now use. So any other questions that we have? Is there anything that, Carolyn, that you would like to add to this, or Lane, that you would like to also include?
I do not have anything I want to add, but I definitely want to take a moment to thank Carolyn and Sharina both for all of their work on this and the time that they've put into this as volunteers helping us with this project. I really appreciate your time. I do want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A. Nick, can we go through and unlock microphones so folks can pop in with audio?
Absolutely. I'll get on it.
Okay.
I'll get on it right now. And we have a question from Trisha. Is there a reason the form does not have a box around the text fields? Is this an accessibility issue?
Yeah, and I can go ahead and answer that one, Trisha. When we were designing the form field, we talked a lot about whether there was the space to add the text to the page, or if we needed to have that box to kind of create that space when you're printing. On some of those text fields, when you print the page, we left enough space for the text box, for the answer for the text box to go in. But there were other options like the checkbox, and then the small text boxes, we just put an underline under. So we made that decision back in, oh gosh, was it the second or third session when we were talking about kind of our design considerations. When you print the form, if you have that small text box, the underline is helpful because it helps guide the pen and pencil as you're writing. But on those larger text boxes, we left it blank because then you're not using ink to print a text box. And if you're using the electronic version, you don't really need that guide there as well. So hopefully that answers the question.
I do want to encourage people, we are getting microphones unmuted, and with Carolyn and myself here as well, I feel like we are totally prepared to answer just about anything. Anything throughout the entire series that you have any questions on, because this is our last opportunity together. We won't be doing a drop-in after this, so jump on in.
And this is Carol again. While that's happening, just want to mention the Canvas site is available that has all of our recordings, all of our practice documents, all of our presentations. The final document for both the PDF version and the Microsoft Word version are also uploaded. So if you want to take a look at kind of where we started and where we ended up and play around with some of those different tools, then those documents are available. You can also use these tools to start your own form. Maybe find a form that you use quite often and take it through this process using the steps that we've discussed, and kind of start your own form from scratch, kind of working through these different workflows that we've talked about. So anything that you need that you missed in this series, go back to that IDAC training site. It is available and has everything we've learned these last, was it 16 weeks? It's been a while, but everything's there. So it's a reusable resource for everyone.
I was going to tell you, Carolyn, and to let everyone know, that's one of the things that I've been doing is using this form that we've created together and looking at the reading order and how I'm using those, what I can see there and what we did there to remind myself what to do in a new form. So it's been really helpful to have this document available, even for me.
Since we still have 26 of you here, I figured I might as well plug, in case you have not heard about it, the WebAIM virtual trainings that we will be having coming up in July and October. Registration is open for that. We're looking pretty good on numbers for both sessions, so we should have more than enough room. If you're interested in that, you can go ahead and message me. I send it out on the IDAC newsletter as well. And then if you know of anyone, please forward that along. We're very excited to have WebAIM. They're great people and have a lot of knowledge as far as web accessibility. So.
I was just going to try to find the link to drop in chat as well. For that, that'll be a fantastic opportunity, not only to learn more basics about digital accessibility. The fourth session on Thursday afternoons will be a breakout. So there'll be more emphasis on creating accessible documents if you wanted to go that track, or if you happen to be more of a web developer, there will be a session that is really more focused on the development and web content management. So I'm pretty excited that we are going to be able to bring WebAIM in and present to you guys. If you're interested, again, we've got that scheduled for two opportunities. The first in July 14th and 15th, and the second in October, October 6th and 7th. So you can register for either one. They'll cover the same principles. It will also be an awesome opportunity to network and learn who else is doing this work within different organizations and start conversations with other folks doing the same work. So when you do run into something that you're unfamiliar with, you might have an idea of who to reach out to. I would also open this time up. If there aren't any questions about the forms specifically, I would open it up as well if you want to just comment on the series as a whole, anything that we could do differently or improve as we consider doing future series like this. Any general feedback for us, or any ideas, any topics you want Nick and I to consider trying to coordinate trainings for. We're always looking for those. That's why we created the form.
And we do have a question from Megan. I like this training, but has any consideration been made to do just a 1 or 2 day training rather than breaking it up over multiple weeks? So the reason we went with this route is we were kind of building the airplane as we were flying it to you guys. We needed to have the time to develop the topics because this, for me, this was all volunteer work on top of my normal workload. So I kind of needed the development time to work through it. In the future, I could see this going down to maybe a 1 to 2 day training. Having done smaller trainings for documents, it's extremely overwhelming. And a lot of the times when we have it all contained within like an 8-hour day, people leave so overwhelmed that it's really hard to put the information into practice. So those were kind of the two things at play for this particular series. We wanted to give people time to use the tools that we were teaching. And then we also needed the time to kind of break down the process and present it in a way that wasn't as overwhelming. So when it comes to accessible documents, those were two factors why we went with this every other week process with kind of a drop-in session in between. And we've got another question from Trisha on tags, training on tags. So I have appreciated this training and using my new skills. I would like to see a training on tags, as would I. I have learned so much more about tags. I'm hoping that we can do a little bit more detailed on different types of tags because I have just opened Pandora's box on all of them myself. And so I hope we can have that in the future. And then Megan, your response, that makes sense. Thank you. I'd love to do it all at once, but I understand how overwhelming it can be. Absolutely. Now that I'm a little bit more versed in all these different things and have learned some shortcuts myself, I think we could more easily take this and make it into like a 1 or 2 day session. But this was super informative to really break down and learn the tool a little bit more for me since I've been learning it myself. So I feel like I could probably put this down into a longer session in the future. And then we've got some feedback from Melissa that time constraints also, having it broken up over multiple times allowed other people to access as opposed to taking a full day away. So Melissa said that she thought it was a great way to present it. I would not have been able to take a day to do this. So again, it really just, we're trying to meet all of our audience needs and presenter needs. And there's just some give and take that we have to do as we go. All right, any other questions or comments? And Lane popped into chat the registration links for the July and October sessions for WebAIM if anyone wants to sign up for that.